Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learned back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about Venus transiting the first house in a natal chart. Now, Venus on average, will say if your house is on average size like 30 degrees, well, and if Venus is only transiting in indirect motion during the transit, then the transit's going to last around 25 days, near that, at least near that time on average. However, if your house is bigger than 30 degrees and or Venus is moving retrograde at any time during that transit, then you would expect the transit to be longer. Anyway, well, I think one thing is when Venus is in the transiting your first house, there might be more of a need to look more attractive, to stand out to others as far as how you appear. You might be more dominated by how you look during this period. And even if you don't make any modifications to your appearance, others may see something alluring about you, or you still might draw others to, and whether it's through attractive mannerisms, perhaps, or what have you. Now, this could be a time where you make an abundance of purchases because Venus is also connected with money, as many of you may know, and you make a lot of purchases, perhaps in order to look better. This could be, I mean, it could range. If you're a woman, it could be a lot of makeup, for example. It could be nicer clothes. In men and women, you could be workout equipment, something you might purchase to make yourself just look better to others. And thing is, too, you might have not just more concern about the appearance, but you might have a stronger appreciation for beauty in general at this time. People may see you at this time. Remember, the first house is the first impression. So people might see, people that first meet you, first impression, might see you as being very amiable and amenable during this period. And even if your chart suggests that you're a rather introverted or introspective person, it could show that you might be more sociable, more outgoing, more gregarious and extroverted than usual. You might have a little more of the social butterfly syndrome, so to speak, during this transit. There might be also a stronger desire for peace and tranquility during this time, the Venus transiting your first house. And this could also indicate that you're a little bit more loving, a little bit more amorous than usual. Might be a greater propensity to buy things for yourself during this period than usual. Even if your chart suggests that you're somebody that's a little bit more frugal on average. So. Uh, and also, your nature might be more about compromise, reconciliation, negotiation during this period than it is ordinarily. You might be somebody that might have aversion to any kind of contentious situation or any kind of relationship that might be somewhat combative, and you really may be striving for peace strongly during this period. Now, another thing too is that this is the first house I'm talking about, and on negative side, you might come across to some people as a little bit more egocentric or maybe even a little self-centered during this period because you might have such a focus on having fun, as far as yourself and making yourself happy during this period. This could be a period too where you might be a lot more relationship oriented than you are ordinarily. It could be this transit, Venus transit in your first house. This could be a time if you don't have any significant other, you might embark on your journey, so to speak, to find one during this time. And this could be about a new beginning as far as a relationship may go. And you may be trying to, if you already are involved in a relationship and you have some significant other, well, you might be doing something to make maybe some modifications for the better, or trying to augment it in some manner. So those are some things to consider during this time. And you could be at a point, this could be a period where you like amicable solutions to things, and you may come across to others as more passive and more docile than you generally are. And And also you might have more, you might show a lot more ability to be tactful, to be diplomatic, and maybe possess a little more charm in you than you ordinarily do during this transit. And this could be a period where if you're on the outs with someone, it could be a time where you're trying to reconcile, and you could be very more apt to acquiesce maybe to someone's wishes than you ordinarily are during this transit. Well, anyway, it's also important to look at the sign that Venus is in during this transit, as this could flavor the transit. So let's say, for example, that Venus is in Aries for either the majority or the whole time of the transit in this first house. Well, it could indicate, because Venus is about money as well as love and relationships, that maybe there may be some purchases you make for yourself that might be somewhat impulsive, you might act with aggression and assertiveness with them, and you might really act in an extemporaneous manner in doing this. And you might really be more aggressive in terms of going after maybe a prospective romantic partner or significant other than you ordinarily would be. Now, let's say that Venus is in Taurus for either the majority or the whole time of the transit in the first house. Now, this could indicate that okay, Venus in Taurus could be about being methodical, deliberate, and persistent. And what it could indicate is that, okay, being the fact it's in the first house, on the first impression, or what you're really emphasizing strongly for you at this point might be some love, if you don't have one, and you might pursue this in a persistent, methodical, and deliberate type fashion. If you're buying anything for yourself, that might be done in that same manner as well. If you're trying to do something to augment your appearance, say, that would be done in that Taurus-like fashion that I described. Now, let's say it's also important to look at the aspects that are made to your natal planets and points from this transit during this period, as this could impact the transit. Now, let's say, for example, that transiting Venus makes a square, inconjunct, or opposition to your natal sun during this period at some point. Well, this could indicate that maybe you might be a little bit lackadaisical and might even come across as arrogant to some degree, and you might, because Venus is transiting the first, you might actually think maybe you look a little bit better than you do, and might be more full of yourself, so to speak, being the fact that Venus is transiting that first house. So it's something just to be wary of perhaps during this transit. Now, let's say another example, let's say that transiting Venus is making a sextile or trine to your natal moon during this period. Well, this could be auspicious perhaps for peaceful relationships with people connected with your home and your family during this period. And the fact that Venus is transiting the first house, you can come across as more about peace and tranquility during this period, and more amenable, so that should help as well. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Venus transiting the first house in a natal chart. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about Venus transiting the second house in a natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.